seems to work here. A dose of elixir. It's running in my veins. You're here just landing in my brain. I'm head over heels for you. You just keep hopping in my bed. My love for you is see through. I'm not just dreaming this. My bunny girl in this. I'm not just dreaming this. My bunny girl in this. I got a fever pitch, and nothing seems to work here. A dose of elixir. It's running in my veins. You're here just landing in my brain. I'm head over heels for you. You just keep hopping in my bed. My love for you is see through. Head over heels for you. Bunny girl, born through.
So, welcome to season 3 of the Posthuman Podcast. We're here today with Harris Hill, the founder of the Center of Childhood Trauma Healing, also a best-selling author of Turning Business Strategies. Oh my God, I am terrible at these introductions tonight, people. It's been a long day. Thriving in Business Strategies for the LGBTQ plus entrepreneur. So, how are you today, Harris?
Hey, I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm very good. Apologies for that introduction. It's very loose. It's a Friday. I'm going to start putting it out there for these Friday shows. For the previous listeners of the show, again, so much light on my face. For the previous listeners of the show, some of these shows can be loose. Some of them are very well structured. This could be a very, very loose show, and I feel it's going to be that way. So welcome to the show. Let's get right into, first of all, you're the founder of the Childhood Trauma Healing
The Center for Childhood Trauma Healing.
Center. Oh my God, I am terrible tonight. This is a Friday show, people. I'm a little bit late. I actually did an abbreviation, the CFCTH. Would that work better for yourself?
Yeah, whatever is easiest for
Okay.
you, I'm easy.
So thank you for taking this seemed like, just to reiterate, this seemed like a season 1 version of my show. Season 3 was meant to be more professional. So I also, because of that, did an abbreviation for it, the CFCTH. So what made you actually found that? We're going to get into the show now. Sorry.
Sure. So it was a little bit of it was an amalgamation, basically, of my own journey with trauma, what I'd been through, which I'm happy to talk about today in more detail, and the fact that, you know, I'm trained as a NLP practitioner, timeline therapist. You know, I've been qualified as a coach for some time, and I hadn't specialised yet. Went to go and work for the NHS and left them this year because I was like, the majority of what I'm seeing in the NHS, I was helping regular folks through their GP practices to help them to manage their health and their mental health and, you know, medical conditions and stuff. The majority of the things that people, or the reason they were struggling to look after themselves, was always childhood trauma every single time.
Of course.
And it's just super common. People don't seem to really know what it is, or they've heard of it, but they only think of sort of childline type adverts on the TV. And so I wanted to specialize in the NHS. You know, the fact that coaches are being used in the NHS at all is a very new thing. So they weren't ready yet, and I was. So I started the center. I work online with folks, and it's really rewarding work. I'm doing what I love doing, really passionate about it, and educating people all about trauma, what it is, what it actually looks like, how common it is, and what we can actually do about it permanently.
Well, I mean, I'm a child of mild trauma. You know, my parents weren't bad, but due to the fact that I would stray off as a child, stuff happens, you know, and it's it's a very tricky subject because most people don't even really get into it until they're an adult. They
Yeah.
can't. It's I don't know what it again. You know, going back to the NLP stuff, I'm a big fan of that. Just want to shout that out. But you know, in terms of when going back to child trauma, it's very difficult to navigate that because you live in this very I think between the ages of essentially a child and when you're maybe just settling down, and that can be at any age. I think everything between there and then is very, very fast. You live in stuff, you're not really getting chance to reflect upon what's happened to you.
Mm.
And a lot of people go, it's like the Russell Brand thing at the moment. People go, well, why didn't they talk about it back then? Maybe because I've lived so much trauma after then that it doesn't even come to the surface. That's just a mild, shitty example from myself. But there's times that, it really is, it's like that. You're living so fast, you don't have time to reflect upon what's going on in day-to-day life. This year, for example, super, super fast. We're now coming up to autumn. Bang, Christmas is around the corner,
Mm.
And in the UK, we live like literally Christmas to Halloween, to be quite honest. They're the only two things in this household that really get celebrated. And I'm not big, it's the only two times of decorations, but you know what I mean? It's like they're the only real times in the UK you see decorations. You don't see real much Easter stuff, a little bit, but going off topic, again, this is a Friday loose show for the listeners. Very, very loose show. But I can kind of see this whole trauma thing. And there's a lot of people as well that they just don't get the time to really reflect, and it hits them later on in life.
Mm.
And I believe that there should be a select bunch of people that are outside the NHS that should be dealing with that, because the NHS, nothing against themselves, but they're ill-equipped in terms of strategic problems.
Mm.
Whereas if you are studying in one thing, but go ahead, I've talked for so long, sorry.
That's right. No, I was going to say, like, inside the NHS, it was really kind of frustrating because, you do have so many people in there who really care. Obviously, not everybody, but a lot of the people in the NHS, they really care about their patients and doing a good job and looking after people. But the resources aren't there. Everybody's stretched thin. Morale's quite low. And the thing is that it got to the point where the area that I was working in Southeast London, if you were lucky, you could get on a list for EMDR, which for those who don't know is eye movement desensitization something, which was originally
don't worry.
I forgot the end. I've typical ADHD. I've forgotten the details.
You're all good. This is a very loose show. Trust me, you don't have to worry about shit on this show.
So EMDR originally was designed to treat simple trauma. I'm not saying it can't be used to help complex trauma, but in my experience and in my colleagues' experience who do the same sort of work as me, it's not uncommon for people with complex trauma to turn up having had a further traumatizing experience with EMDR. Now, obviously, that can happen in with any modality. If people have got it wrong, mistakes happen, and there's no way that we can have 100% success rate with anything.
Of course.
But in my experience, the way that I work is much more about helping the client to kind of intuitively lead their own healing, and I'm just there to kind of facilitate it. And we give them emotional experiences that kind of finish off or resolve certain issues in a way that feels positive to them. It doesn't mean it's easy. There are a lot of there's often a little, few tears and sometimes a little bit of a cry, but it should be a release rather than a trigger. And to me, it's such a obvious process. Now I've been through it and I look back, I'm like, this is not complicated. It's not rocket science. And yet I think to medical folks who think in a very logical way, who don't necessarily have much training or a huge amount of experience with emotional intelligence and processes, it looks like an unfathomable abstract thing. But I think when you've done that journey yourself and you're there with somebody who's also on that same journey, you kind of know roughly what direction we're heading in, what that feels like. I often watch my clients, I'll ask them a question and I watch these expressions come across their face, and I know exactly what reaction they're having. And I'll often sort of say, you know, for example, one of the things that I help people to do is to integrate the part of them that's anxious. That sounds like,
No, I actually fully. I don't. Again, I'm gonna.
yeah,
I'm not. I don't mean to cut you off. I actually believe that anxiety is a good thing. I believe that you can learn a lot from anxiety. I believe it's like forward planning for the mind.
potentially, but also what we find is that at some point there's a part of you that's developed anxiety as a coping mechanism to help you to survive.
Yeah, of
And
course.
yeah, and we get to this point in our adulthood where it's still going a bit nuts and we no longer need it in the same way. But because our society teaches us, and by the way, I'm very pro medication when it helps you. I think that can be really great and a good lifesaver, 100%.
No, me too. I will admit there's a lot of people out there that go, you should go fully holistic, you should do this. I believe whatever works best for yourself,
Yes,
you
yeah,
know, unless it's going down the deep end of, you know,
yeah.
but I think if it's really going to benefit you in the long run, mentally, physically, then I have nothing against that.
Yeah, 100%. But I think when so much of what we see in the world, even in coaching, places, or people who talk about, oh, how to sort of hijack the brain and all this sort of thing, either we're looking at two different forms of suppression. Either it's medication should do you, that's the end of the conversation, or it's um if you do yoga or you do sports or you work out a lot, you get your sort of your dopamine or
Yeah, of
whatever
course.
going, which is great. I'm not saying it's not regulating. Of course, it absolutely, all those things absolutely are, but it's not an answer. It's not dealing with the root issue. So often when I say to people, right, how would you feel about
Interesting.
getting to know your anxious part? Usually most people's reaction is anger, frustration, then they want to tell me to piss off.
I mean, that's actually a really interesting take because most people nowadays, and especially podcasters, are like, "Hey, you should just work out. You should do this. It'll get rid of your issues." It kind of is a little bit. It does get rid of them, but when you then go and sleep at night and you're not doing fuck all, those issues will always hit the back of your mind.
Yeah.
You know, most people. I used to listen to tons of podcasters, and I go, it was why I kind of did it. But then I go, most of these are all just chatting bollocks. These are all really unrealistic points of view. Again, the reason I do it is because I just like talking to people. That's the only real reason. I don't even give a fuck about the numbers, to be honest. If they're better, cool. If not, I don't care. I've had a decent conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, I'll get friends from that. I've not had a bad conversation so far. But that's because most people I talk to, it's just all common sense, and this is where all these main podcasters lead you down the road. There's no common sense. These are all wacky people. What are you talking about? We're just all normal people. We all have the same common sense. We've lived the same bunch of years. It's not like someone's just come in from some different dimension and gone, hey, well, we're going to do this. No, we live in the same life. But the thing is, again, wild tangent there, these Friday shows. Fucking hell. I'm really going back to the season 1 right now, fully. It's a Friday night, people. I don't give a fuck. but going back to that, at the end of the day, it is what it is. There's only so much that we can really do. And I believe that, all these mainstream people are they're like modern idols in a way. We're not for myself, but for most young people, like modern idols, like Joe Rogan. Ooh, look at Joe Rogan. All these people, not just him. I use him as just a little thing. I'm going to cut off this topic and let's go back to yourself because I'm keeping this too much off cuff. I'm going off tangent. This is a Friday show. Now, let's go back. So obviously the CFCTH, as I'm going to abbreviate it, just to save myself that. So, what again? You spoke a little bit about it. What's been some of the main struggles you've had? Again, without going into too much detail, and without me being able to go onto a tangent.
Yeah. So struggles personally, you mean?
Well, again, not necessarily personally, but in terms of yeah, maybe personally, the journey towards it,
Sure.
sorry, it's a very
Yeah.
late show tonight, people.
No, that's fine. So I
Long,
mean,
long day.
so the pressing issue that I had for just about 20 years was my PTSD,
Okay.
and that was as a result of child sexual trauma.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Thank you.
I
And
experienced that.
yeah, but I mean, unfortunately, it's such a common thing. And the thing is, it was so pressing that, I kept going around and asking anyone I could think to ask, like, can you help me with this? Can we get rid of it? Can we treat this? And they would always look at me like, I don't really understand what you're saying.
Right.
And I was like, well, I want to feel better. Like, how can I recover from this? And they were like, I don't know what you mean. There was this total like blank looks or sympathetic looks. And it was like no one wanted to break the news to me that like you're going to live this way for the rest of your life kind of thing. And
Can I ask your age? Your age? Do you mind me asking?
I was about 10, I think, 9 or 10.
No. I mean, current day.
Current day, I'm 35.
Oh, okay, I'm 32. Coming.
Okay.
So again, it's roughly the same. I just wanted to get a perspective for the time frame
Mhm.
because I know that during the 90s there was a lot of shit going on.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? That's all it was. It's just for the listeners out there, the fact that the 90s, I also experienced a few things. So, but go on, carry on. Sorry.
Sure. So I just kept asking and eventually got to the point where I was like, well, the way that people are responding, I'm also autistic. So when people don't communicate directly, I'm a bit like, just say it. Just spit it out. Be explicit, be direct, So eventually I was like, well, people are just being weird every time I ask this question. So I got to the point where I was like, maybe I'm delusional in believing that I could recover from this. And then eventually at 29, so nearly 20 years after the initial thing that had happened, and it unfortunately wasn't the only thing. By that point, there'd been 3 different men who'd sort of committed these things. So
Sorry to hear that.
thank you. And so I went to see this other therapist about something else, and she said, and what do you want to do about your PTSD? And I was like, well, what is there to say? And she's like, well, do you want to get rid of it? And I was completely shocked. I said, you're the first person that's told me that could happen. And she's like, well, is it something you want? I was like, obviously, fuck's sake. get on with it. So, we did some sort of groundwork first. And then by the time
like a hypnotherapy technique, or was that through NLP?
No, so it was a mixture of, so the modalities that she used was a mixture of something called matrix re-imprinting and EFT, which is the tapping.
Okay.
But the kind of main part of it that I remember and that was really profound was basically that we went back to visit my younger self the day after the very first incident and had this conversation, all the things that needed to happen at that time and didn't. We kind of gave it together. We created this ending to that memory that needed to happen in order to let it resolve. And then we took, sort of visualized taking that younger me out of that situation, putting them in a safe place and kind of closing off this memory. And I had no idea it was going to work at this point. If you'd have told me to like strip off and dance around under a thunderstorm, I probably would have given it a go. But I didn't believe it would work. I was like willing to give anything a go at that point. And literally with that first session, so it's done in 2 sessions. After the first session, I got in my car, I opened Facebook or whatever it was, instantly saw a news headline about sexual trauma that normally would have sent me completely off. I'd have been like triggered in tears, like felt very unsafe, would have often locked my car doors. I'd be feel very, very triggered. And I looked at it, braced myself, and nothing happened. And since then, I've not had a single flashback, no nightmares. I've unfortunately two men in my life, or who I've met or know, sort of around my age or whatever, have turned out to also be predators. Obviously, I don't speak to them anymore. But when I was faced with that, obviously it was shocking and it was terrible, but I wasn't experiencing it as a victim in the present. I was just experiencing it as a moral adult.
Right, got you.
So it was such a I was so relieved, I was so grateful that I was faced with these people that I thought I knew and obviously didn't. And I was okay. It was distressing, it was upsetting, obviously very disappointing. You think about the victims of those people, but I wasn't triggered, and that was the main difference. So, long story short, off the back of that, I went to then train. I then, after that, went traveling for a bit, which I never thought I'd do because I like my routines and it scared the life out of me, but I did it. And at the end of my travels, I had a breakdown. I came home, went back to my trauma therapist who had then retrained in treating complex trauma. And again, all of the modalities we use are very similar to NLP. In fact, some of it was borrowed from NLP.
Have you ever used that upon yourself?
Yeah,
Yeah, me too. Again, when dealing with trauma, some people don't advise like using it on yourself, but it is what it is.
I think once you're confident about what you're doing
Yeah,
and you've got a real strong sense of where you're going, what you're doing, and what not to do, I think it's okay. Like I was told when I did my training, they're like, you can't really do this on yourself, but I've done loads of like stuff
yeah,
on
yeah.
myself and it's been really positive. So
I used to be an insomniac, and I
uh
used it on myself. So
amazing.
that's the only, and a massive drug addict. So that's,
Uh-huh.
you know. But no, sorry, carry on. I'm glad
Yeah.
you steered the ship in because I'm actually really interested in the tale. So sorry.
Okay. That's cool. So I had this breakdown, went back to my therapist who then trained in complex trauma. She did the assessment and she said, you've got complex PTSD. And I was like, oh my goodness. Okay. Had you asked me what was your upbringing like, what's your family dynamics like, I'd have said it's a real mixture. Like, my family are very funny, very cheeky. We have a lot of laughs, and at the same time, there's a lot of dysfunction.
Of course, we're British.
It's well, exactly. But to learn that I had complex trauma, and to learn that a lot of what I went through is categorically abuse and neglect, was very difficult to swallow. Especially, I've supported many people in my personal life and professional life who don't have contact with their parents, and I see very clearly that that's absolutely essential for them. But it had never occurred to me that what I'd been through was so similar and so close to what those other people had been through who had a very different reaction to me. And I was like, oh wow. So it was a lot to, like I said at the beginning, so much of what we think childhood trauma probably looks like is to do with those sort of like childline adverts. Like we're
Yeah,
thinking about children who are starved and left on their own, abandoned, all the rest of it. But actually, most of the childhood trauma survivors that I know now, myself included, come from families where there's maybe not even been a divorce, like
no,
let alone anything else. But so much of it is about neglect, about our needs not being met. We might have parents who are emotionally unavailable and dismissive, and they're like, oh well, no broken bones, just suck it up.
of course.
Or parents who were unavailable. It could even be just because they were ill. You might have only had one parent who was very not present because they were poorly or they had cancer or something. Um, or it could be that they struggled a bit with substance abuse and
I
things like
mean,
that. So
it's the simplest of triggers. The thing with children, and what I can gather, is it's the simplest of triggers that can just span them out. For myself, again, because I wasn't a great kid, I had a great mum, I had a great dad. They were very loving. Got a divorce when I was young, but to be quite honest, things weren't really that shit, you know. got a little bit bullied because of, I could talk to the heavens about that, but that is what it was. And but there's little catalysts that can really fuck you off. And for me, it was the divorce,
Mm,
and for any sort of nuclear family, they don't really exist that more. There's very few, but nowadays there's little minor triggers and subsets that just really can just snap kids off to any sort of, especially in today's day and age where there's social media. I mean, fuck me, if social media had been around when my mum and dad were getting divorced, they probably wouldn't have got divorced, because it would have just looked so terribly upon themselves, to the point, it's kind of crazy when you look at things like that. But no,
mm,
so what is it that, I mean, one of the things I actually, I took like 18 months off, upon having, I've got three kids. I got two boys and a girl who unfortunately, I'm not with the mother of the girl, due to the fact that I just ran off like a fucking, again, I'm going to be open and honest. I wasn't really ready. I thought I was ready, kind of wasn't, in its own right. A little bit drug addled still, and I fucking puss it out, and that is what it is. I would love to fix that. I've constantly tried, but that is what it is, but I've got two boys, and when I had kids, I also, again, for the previous listeners, when I was 17, I had a daughter who turned out when I was 21. She wasn't mine. People know that, but just for yourself, I basically raised a girl for like 3-4 years. She weren't mine. And then I went down this path of just wanting to have a family to make up for the loss of what I had. Constant battle and chase. Took me 10 years. Then I've got two boys. If you get all that, it's like a shitty jigsaw puzzle piece on a Friday night.
mm.
But when I have my two boys, I look and I have constantly, since having kids, just gone down this path of wanting to protect kids, from every aspect. And I genuinely believe that they are the most vulnerable of people right now because of social media, everything that's going on, so what's some of the main things that you do at the CFCTH? I'm going to keep doing that. I can't, obviously, I abbreviated that earlier.
Yeah.
What some of the main things that you do, some of the main problems that you occur, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess everybody presents their kind of childhood trauma very differently. And it really depends. I mean, obviously, one of the main kind of signs that you have childhood trauma and it's still very much affecting you is really in how it affects your relationship with other people. um One of the things I hear from people a lot is like, I don't have problems with close relationships, and I'm like, well, how many have you got? And they're like, oh, well, none. And I'm like, well, that's one of the problems, is that you avoid close personal relationships. That is one of them. um but one of the other really common things is things like codependency. A lot of people don't know what that means. They think it just means that you're too involved with other people, and it's not that. It's when you're fully codependent, you are completely focused on other people, and it's unbalanced. So it means that it feels to you when you're in that, and it's often it's a coping mechanism that you develop as you grow up in a difficult environment. So codependency means that you've grown up to constantly look around you and look at the people around you, and to work out if they're happy or not, if their needs are met or not. Because if they're not, like having a turbulent parent, that's when the parent kicks off. So you've grown up with this idea that your safety very much depends on the mood, the needs, and the will of everyone around you. So
Course.
you become completely focused on the people around you. And obviously it's a really important survival mechanism. It helps you to survive your environment, to make it to adulthood, you know, but it's not a healthy way to exist, and it's not something, once you're out of that environment, it's that mechanism's no good to you. And it's when you are that way where your sense of safety depends on how everyone else around you feels, what they're doing, you know, that's what makes you a prime target for abusive partners. And that's often why the cycle continues, because you're unknowingly still playing the role of the people pleaser, or the person who can't afford to have boundaries. It's not your fault that you're that way, but until that's changed, you will often end up, if you're not completely scared off by relationships altogether, you will often end up with a lot of the wrong people.
Well, I mean, that's something else that at the moment, you know, again, you know, you're part of the LGBTQ plus community. And again, I feel very much sorry for your community at the minute, because you're getting so much fucking flack and shit from stuff that isn't even been committed by most of your community.
Yeah.
I would imagine that it's like 0.001%, if not way. You could even add another decimal point on there, to be quite
Yeah.
honest. And I actually, this at the minute, I spend a lot of time. I look into every fucking thing. You know, I spend half my life on the internet, but I never look at things from a biased point of view. I always look at things twofold. You know, in the fact that, you know, like I was just saying, a lot of things at the moment, you know, in your community, you're going to get a lot of shit for it, which is completely undeserved. And it's stuff that is basically being used for political gain in a way. It's being used for, I'm not even sure, but I genuinely believe that out there is, at one point, there was talking about like Russian troll farms who make memes. I believe that there is a bunch of these troll farms that are sitting there, not only putting discourse through the, you know, your community, but also racial communities. Because I've spoke to tons of people, not a single racist bone in their body, from any fucking race, any whatever. But then meanwhile, you go onto any sort of platform and it's just all slander. And most people don't realize that they're bots. They don't know what the fuck's going on. Some of them, and then end up becoming real people, unfortunately, because of all these fucking bullshit bots, which put some sort of spin on an opinion that shouldn't even be relevant, and then it aims, you know, your way. And I genuinely feel sorry for your community at the minute, because you're getting so much shit for that. Have you got any genuine? Again, I want you to actually put some fucking real thoughts out there, because I believe that there's a really big point to be made about this, but I can't. I'm not in your shoes. I don't know. You know what I mean? I can't speak for your opinion. You know, and it was one of my big actual notes. That was a real question. There was structure to this, don't worry.
It's really interesting. I think there are so many facets that, you know, we could touch upon it on this, but I think the few things I would say is that one of the things that comes up a lot in my work and in my own healing is something called emotional immaturity. And obviously that it is what it says on the tin, but one of the primary signs that someone is emotionally immature is one of them is that someone's emotionally phobic. The moment that you bring up feelings as being relevant, important, or significant in any way, they reject it, they laugh at it, they mock it, it's an absolute no-go. They have this very visceral reaction to something that they claim is not important, which obviously in itself is a bit of an irony, isn't it? That they're having big feelings about big feelings. But
yeah,
you know, and so I think then leading on to that, it's this idea that actually how I feel as an individual, how you feel as an individual is important, and it changes your experience, it changes your identity, it's nuanced, it's not predictable. And that's another thing. When me as a non-binary person turns up and, you know, I've started taking testosterone, I'm kind of waiting for it to give me more than fuzz, but there you go. And You know, I'm also looking for like chest surgery. I'm on the waiting list for that.
Okay.
And when someone like me comes along, I'm just minding my own business. And most of my life, I'm either working and sort of supporting other people. It means a lot to me, and it's what I do. Or I'm enjoying all of the friends and family that have very close, very fun, hilarious, and deep, meaningful relationships with. Or I'm at the cinema because I love film, or I'm at Tesco's getting food because I also love food and cooking and baking and stuff like that. And that's mostly my life, you know. I'm not doing anything else. And yet the fact that I exist and that I'm happy as me, I'm comfortable, I've found, you know, what makes me feel truly at home in my life and happy to be alive, really fucking upsets some people.
Got ya.
And it really riles them up. And I think that I think again we're coming to people who have some sort of maybe limited emotional range, or it makes them feel emotionally um unsafe. But I think people like me, just the fact that I exist, and I think it's quite obvious that this is who I am.
Of course.
I think it makes people uncomfortable. And I think it's this idea that actually, if you're saying to me that you are how you feel, and I'm not comfortable looking at how I feel or being too aware of that, then what if my identity, or the one that I'm used to practicing, is bullshit?
Yeah.
And I think that frightens people. I speak to people all the time who are very emotionally comfortable, very confident in themselves. And when I turn up, they enjoy my difference. And it's almost not even an important part of the conversation
No,
most of the time.
I know exactly what you mean. I get
Yeah.
exactly what you mean. This is the thing. I didn't mean to cut you off. The thing is, this is like the type of conversation that the world needs. Not all the bullshit, not all of what you hear on most of these podcasts, where it's just a person taking a side, going, "Hey, ragtime story, I was bad. They're coming after your kids." That is what the fuck are you talking about?
Bollock.
What do you know? That topic came up about 18 months ago, and not a single point during that time has any member of the LGBTQ plus community ever.
No.
It's not. There's maybe been the odd weirdo that's gone, yeah, I'm part of that community. Yeah, because you're now going to claim that because you want some sort of leniency. That's but relatively, and this is where it becomes like a weird. You see, I don't take any stance on shit, but I take my own stance. But I hate it when all of these fucking Americans, and unfortunately, we take a lot of shit like fashion trends, all of this stuff off them. And in doing so, this is also one of those things that we've also sort of gone, hey, and it's coming over to ourselves now. And unfortunately, you know, it's having a weird effect to the point where it shouldn't even be happening. You know, 10, 15 years ago, it wouldn't have even made a difference. Do you know what I mean?
Standing at the balcony outside, just looking at the galaxy all night. Drinking rum and wine just to feel the high. Feeling high just to feel alright. Looking at the pictures right up in my phone. Driving down the sunset dressed in gold. Designers to express yourself, we at the stars. My private runway model when we're all alone. I'll never let you go as long as I'm alive. The world is so much beautiful when you're around. flashing city lights. 2 a.m. and faded, yeah, we're killing time. Walking through these empty streets all night. Just you and I, you and I. The way you slip and push when you feel yourself. Shining living life like it's a fashion hell. The saddest to express yourself doing the most. My private runway model when we're all alone. I'll never let you go as long as I'm alive. The world is so much beautiful when you're around. Can't stand to see you crying and my arms are fine. And when it's done, I hope you're just by my side.
It's all right. I'm pretty good at editing. I can cut.
Okay, cool. My Wi-Fi literally just dropped out, and I was like, "Oh no!" So I've joined on my phone, so I hope it should hold.
No, you're okay. It's not a problem.
Thanks.
I'm glad this is a very, very loose show. My statement, I can't remember what it was. Luckily, I have music in between my show, so that's almost like luckily, it's a really good cutout point because I don't normally get a chance to go, and that music was. So I'll now do that. And luckily, you listen to. There you go. So, now I'm gonna have to put a statement out there for these Friday shows because they do get too loose. If it had been like a Tuesday, I would have been full on point with these notes. But
No,
no,
it's all good.
no, to be honest, I actually prefer these loose sort of chats anyway because it's what podcasting should be, not a bunch of notes, teleprompter, all the bullshit.
Yeah, agreed.
But no, I believe the last thing I was talking about was, you just getting a bunch of flack and shit. And
Yeah.
to be quite honest, you don't deserve it. But obviously, you're a best-selling author. Let's talk about your book. So what made
Yeah.
you write a book?
Well, I didn't like this was a real magical thing. So I just want to preface this by saying that if you have a brain that's only used to mostly shit, when a good thing happens, it absolutely blows your mind. Okay. And that was the case for me. So in 2021, I knew about this foundation. It's called the Pride and Joy Foundation in America. It's a non-profit that's all there to kind of educate people to hopefully reduce the homelessness and suicide rates of young, like queer people, like kids and teenagers, because we're massively disproportionately at
No,
risk of
that's
all of that stuff.
actually very, very true. That's,
Yeah.
surprisingly.
Yeah. And so Elena Joy, who runs that, she contacted a bunch of us and she was like, I want to create this publishing place for like queer authors, and I want to kick the whole thing off by writing a book for queer business owners because that's all what we do. I'm looking for a $300 donation to help us get it going and a chapter. Are you up for it? And I was like, yeah, of course. So I thought, it's a really worthy cause. I used to do a lot of inclusion, diversity type training in the past myself. So I went ahead and did it. I wrote a chapter. My contribution was all about relying on intuition when you've got nothing else, basically. Intuition is a big part of my work. It's also a big part of my identity, and I think it's really important. It's really important to be a well-rounded person, and also just to kind of be, I think, sort of integrated in the world, just to have a sense of sort of the world around you and other people. And it's quite magical. So anyway, I wrote this piece, sent it off, sent the money off, and in pre-sales alone, we hit like 5 leaderboards, and then because of the success of it, the publishing company who helped us to kind of set this whole thing up and distribute and print the books and stuff. I was the only British author, by the way. Everyone else was sort of in Mexico, US, and Canada.
Mexico.
A lot of the editors came back and they were like, "You've misspelled a huge number of words here." And I was like, "If you consider that I'm British, how many are wrong?" And they're like, "Oh, none." I was like, "Yeah, cheers." So
Those fucking Yanks. We wrote that language.
they're
I'm
like, "Oh,
telling you now.
as
Fucking
you're
wrote
as
it.
you're British, we'll allow you to keep the spellings as you know them." I was
Yeah,
like, "Yeah, thanks for that. Very generous." Anyway,
damn fucking
it
right.
was a it was a I was like, "Yeah, cheers." So
No way.
because of the success of it, even in pre-sales, the distributing publisher who was helping us was so impressed in America that they then petitioned the Library of Congress in America to add 2 new literature categories, like nationally. So it was the first time. So that's a long process, but ultimately, like, they've had loads of requests for, I think it was queer business and non-binary as 2 different categories.
So like a oh got ya. Yeah, so like a subcategory. Got ya. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was kind of a big thing. It made a big difference, and it's potentially, influencing sort of literature and sort of policy and stuff. So it was so mind blowing, and it was like every day we were getting more good news and more good news. And the following week, I had to take it off, because I couldn't cope. I felt very overwhelmed, and like it was really, people were like, "Oh my god, congratulations, this is amazing." And I was totally overwhelmed. My brain was fried. I was like, I don't this is such an unfamiliar feeling, and in such a big way, and for so prolonged for so many days. I was almost hoping for a disaster so that I could sort of feel back in
Rattling.
my comfort zone again. It was hard.
Love it. It's rattling,
Yeah,
isn't it? Sometimes when
yeah,
I mean it happens to everybody, and that's the thing. Even in this podcasting game, I'm not big, but occasionally I'll get this little number and I go, whoa, that's not bad. I'll go, wow, that's not bad. Or I'll get someone, like I once had someone that wanted to come on the show. Just listen to it, and it was like, I have an open invite for the show. If anyone ever, I'll talk to anybody. And, if they come on, and someone wanted to come on. And I was like, oh, cool. And you get these little kicks. But I mean, in terms of numbers and books, that's a different thing because that is always out there. And the fact that, in the Library of Congress, that's a completely different ball game.
yeah,
That's
yeah. It
you know,
frightened the life out of me, man.
yeah, that's different.
Yeah.
So what's your like writing style? You know, what's your go-to? Because everyone's got their own style, and I've met a lot of authors, I've talked to a lot of authors, and everyone's got their own style. I'm a big writer myself, allegedly, and I've got my own style. But what's your own?
I don't even know how I'd describe it really. I mean, I do a lot of storytelling, and there's a lot of I quite like a bit of crude humor. Obviously not unkind, but I quite like a bit of childish, bit of shocking, or very sort of saying something maybe a bit disgusting in a really colourful and
You know,
interesting way.
I can get behind that. You're all good.
Yeah.
It's British
And
humor. What the
yeah,
fucking?
well, I've just started writing a comedy, and
Oh, really? Cool.
yeah, it's been brewing for a while, so I've just started writing. I belong to a writing group and have done for years. We meet up every week pretty much, and I've always written about my sort of whole life in listening to literature. I have to listen on audio. I've got ADHD, so I can't fucking read a book to save my life. So I listen on audio, and all the stuff that I write is all around. It's all nonfiction, like pretty much like 99% all
Okay.
nonfiction. And it got to a point where it's like I want to write something else. Like, my work and all the things I have to say are important, but I'm also really funny, so I want to write something that feels like really good fun and a bit of a challenge and a bit different. So I've started.
Very, very challenging, by the way.
I'm enjoying it so far, and I think the way that my brain works is that I think it makes for a good comedy because I've got some tragedy in there that I feel comfortable in using.
Tragedy creates comedy.
Yes, and then contrasting it with, and I'm taking a lot of inspiration from my own life, and so far what I've read out has had a really strong response. So
I mean, are you because again, I don't want to give too much away, but I'm writing a mockumentary myself. I
Ah,
might have to edit that out because I shouldn't be giving too much away. A few friends know about it. I might have to edit this. But I'm writing myself at the moment, so
amazing.
it might be really interesting to do some sort of collab on that. That'd be very interesting. Um,
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of humor. It's very hard to write humor. Um, because it's so personal as well. You know, I've been on stage, I've done comedy. I wouldn't class myself as a comedian, although it's on my Twitter. But you know, I've done a few, but for some reason I can't get on stage anywhere at the moment. I don't know what it is.
Well,
They weren't even bad gigs. They literally, I did a couple of, they were great, and I was like, and every time I've gone to try and book with the company again, they're like, nope. And I'm like, why? I actually killed on stage. It was really good. Like, all laughs all around. I murdered there. I murdered outside the club. I was joking the whole night. Everyone was laughing. Yet,
mm.
maybe they was laughing at me. Who knows?
Who
Who knows?
knows? Yeah, it's interesting. I think I get laughs generally because I'm often willing to say the things that a lot of people think but don't
Yeah,
say. But and it also it's basic stuff and it's stuff that all human beings. So I think that's why a lot of my humor is childish and why it works because you know a well-timed fart is funny for most people,
of course.
or that in the beginning part of my comedy it's taken that's this particular scene is taken from real life where I've broken up with a partner abroad. We just so happen to be already staying in a sort of room together that we've rented, and he's like, do you fancy one last shag? And I was like, no, I'm all right, thanks.
So
So
the simplicity of it, you know,
yes,
delivered again in the right tone. Most things, again, it's all the thing with like UK comedy. It's just so non-verbal as well. And as
yes.
long as the tone's set, it's in it. Are you a big fan of Ricky Gervais? Because you know,
Not really. I don't think he's a
really.
really big fan of my people either. So I think it's mutual.
Oh, interesting, interesting. I don't know. I don't know. I couldn't answer for that. I don't know, but he does do a lot of. So what do you think about when? I, just again, I can get 100% behind what you're saying. So, What's your personal thoughts when comedians like, let's say, Dave Chappelle or Ricky Gervais take shots at your community? Even if they go, hey, I've got this friend. In terms of Dave Chappelle, he goes, yeah, this friend for Daphne or whatever it was. You know, I'm not too sure. That could have been a false story. Who knows? You know, people embellish. But what's your thoughts on like that? Because it's I actually love to get everyone's real point of views on this show.
Yeah, I mean,
Like
I
you
think
in that community.
I think my bottom line is that I've one of my friends is a trans comedian. She's really made it big in the past year and a bit. Her name's Jordan Gray. She's
Okay.
absolutely brilliant. You should check her out. The
Let
thing
me,
is
let
that
me, Can I just get my pen? Just.
yeah.
Oh, sorry. But go on, carry on. Go on.
But so much of the sort of trans communities that I'm in online are absolutely fucking hilarious. Some of the jokes that we tell and the way we rip the piss out of each other is it's universal and it's so good. It has me laughing every day. Nobody's taking themselves seriously in there, but I
Yeah.
think the difference is the jokes are not dehumanizing. They're really funny. So I'll give you an example. Someone had put up a picture the other day. It was a meme where, oh, what's that actor's name? He's a curvy guy. He's a big guy. Can't remember his name. Anyway, they're taking this actor's face.
What's he in? I might be able to get. I'm big on films. If I don't get it, I will let down the whole
He's
audience. Honestly, I'll let down myself. To be honest.
he's a white guy. He's chubby. He's probably in his, I don't know, 40s or something. He's got lightish brown hair. I can't. He's American.
What was he in
No,
recently?
I can't. It's really
Oh, All right, I didn't let you down, people.
He might have been in Hitch. He might have been
Oh,
the
I know who you mean. Fucking hell. He's normally in the Sandler films. Oh, fucking hell. I know exactly, listeners. It doesn't matter. Everyone
I
knows
think it's him. I think it's him.
everyone, it's him. Everyone knows who you're talking about. He was in
My
here.
memories. Yeah.
He was in Here Comes the Boom. He was in, everyone knows who we're talking
I
about.
think it's him.
If
But
it's him.
but what they've done, this meme as an example of like how fucking hilarious our group is.
Oh,
Yeah.
I get the meme now.
They've taken his head and put it on a body that's got a massive rack, and they sort of put the thing across of being like most trans guys, and it's bless them. It's so often that you get trans guys, and they've got this really masculine face, but they haven't had top surgery yet, and they've just got this really impressive, very very good looking chest. So you know, so I don't think when I get. I think the idea of being offended is bollocks. I think you're either hurting people or you're not, and everything else is just taste, I guess.
Of course.
But one of the few times I genuinely get offended, and it's not very often because it's too exhausting to be offended. But the times that I get annoyed is when a comedian will make a trans joke that doesn't make any fucking sense,
Okay.
or it doesn't work, but they're too ignorant to know that it doesn't work. So, for example, I tried watching Michelle Wolf on Netflix the other day, and
Don't know who
again,
she is, but fuck her. Go on.
no, I've got nothing against her. I think she's great. I really like her style. I like the way that she talks. Like, it's brilliant. But the trans joke that she made was that she was saying, "Oh, my friend got annoyed when I called her breast implants fake," and then she said, "I'm going to butcher this, but I don't even care." But she said,
If anything,
wouldn't
you
you
make
wouldn't
it funnier.
Yeah, but she said, if your friend had breast implants, you'd call them fake, wouldn't you? And everyone in the audience was like, yeah. So she's like, so I guess we're all a little bit transphobic, right?
I
And
know what you mean.
I wouldn't have minded if it wasn't for the fact that majority of trans women don't have breast implants. At the moment, it's like a lot of them might want to, but generally, I think it's around 11%, which is not a huge amount more than other women. So I was like, I wouldn't have minded. It wasn't, she wasn't being offensive, but it just didn't work. It wasn't accurate, and she didn't know what she was talking about.
I mean, do you know what? That's really interesting because I've never thought about the stats. Again, I wouldn't. It's not that I wouldn't look into it. It's just something that wouldn't come up on my regular day to day. If someone would say to me, "Do you know what the stats are between regular women's implants and trans women implants?" I'd go, "Not a clue. I wouldn't have a clue." But the fact that some comedian would try and make a joke about that and that would expect the whole audience to know and it to land is a pretty shitty premise. It doesn't even make sense in itself.
Yeah.
Because how would the audience even know those stats? I wouldn't have a clue. I'd just go, ha ha. Wait, what? That's literally what it'd be, like a clap and a wait, what? What are you on about?
So it was a bit weird, but I'll tell you a really good one that I saw the other day was a male comedian, and he was saying, oh, I've got this friend who's a trans man. He was born a girl, but he's now a man. And he's saying to me, oh, I'm not sure if I should get a penis. I'm thinking about it. And the guy's like,
I think I've seen this.
Yeah. And the guy's like, it's one of the best parts of it. You've got to go for it. And he said, no, but the thing is that when they make my penis, they've got to take a big skin graft from my leg or my arm, and I'm not really sure if I want like this massive scar. And then they're pretty gnarly. I've seen them. And the guy's like, if you have a big arm scar, is that like the trans guy version of having big feet?
What?
Because you can basically see how big the knob is.
I kind of get where he's going, but there's no landing with that.
Well, maybe it's just how I told it. But either way,
I don't even think it's the way you told it. There's no landing in that.
I wasn't bothered though, because that's an okay joke to make. Like the idea that a normal thing that some trans folks are doing could be interpreted in a certain way socially in the positive, and I was like, that's great. I'm fine with that.
I mean, if I would have been in your shoes, I'd have gone, yeah, what a great correlation.
Yeah.
But it doesn't really like the A to B is bullshit. You know, it's like comparing. Okay, it's like comparing hay to a bunch of bananas. You know, fruit to wheat. There's no, you know, or let's
Yeah,
take
I mean,
even worse. You know, that's the
it's
thing is
maybe,
it's
yeah.
if someone's going to make a joke, they should at least keep it in the same sort of mind frame. Most people nowadays just laugh because someone else laughs and go, "Oh, what about that?" Laughter's infectious. You can get like professional laughter people in a crowd nowadays,
Yeah, yeah.
and they just sit there and go, "Ha ha," and then next thing, go, "Oh, they're laughing, so I'm going to laugh."
Yeah, for sure.
The
But I
whole
think,
thing is a con.
yeah, for sure. But I think from my point of view, I guess what I'm trying to say is that there are some jokes that are just shit, and there are others that I think are totally okay to make. Like it's not hurting anybody to say that, even if it's not your type of joke or it's not the epitome of comedy. It's still totally fine to make that joke.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Of course. I mean, because it's not really harming anyone whatsoever. You know, it's.
No,
Well, I mean, not really.
no, and
To be
also
honest.
he was introducing a fact that happens to an audience who might not otherwise have known that.
I mean, I didn't really know that, to be quite honest. So that is actually a really good fact. I wouldn't have
Yeah.
known that. Again, you know, like the previous interview I did with the good old doctor Jawad Mustafa about breast cancer. I went into that knowing I didn't know fuck all. And it's almost the same in, you know, with this conversation now. I can't know how any person in your community feels. But yet every single person on what would be my side of the fence feels like they have every entitlement, every say so, and it's like, man, you don't know shit. Like,
No.
come
And
on,
do you know
man,
what?
you know?
The bottom line for me, and this is, when people, I've had people come up to me, and I think because I'm often the first or only sort of trans non-binary person that somebody's met, they look at me and they're like, "You're from this minority. I'm going to throw all my questions at you
Yeah.
and put you on the spot and ask you to make an argument for something that you weren't even thinking about. You were just going to, like, I don't know, get a cup of tea or have a shit or something. I don't know." And and then it puts me on this spot and I'm like, "Oh, fucking hell, here we go again." And someone's like, "Can I ask you a question?" I'm like, "Right, this is going to
Well,
be great fun." Not.
well,
And
that's
then
kind of why I don't want to aim so many questions because I know.
yeah,
But go
but
on,
it's all
sorry.
right. Like if somebody's sympathetic already and they've kind of already stated their, then it's fine. And we're in a situation where I expect this. But when I'm in Tesco's or I'm minding my own business, I'm playing some like silly game on my phone or I'm texting my friends and someone comes up to me and they're sort of already annoyed and they're wanting me to kind of help to alleviate their irritation. I'm like, fuck's sake. So anyway, the
No,
thing
I know what
the
you mean.
thing that I say when people are like, "What about trans women in sports?" And this week it's been ban
Oh,
trans women from women's wards in hospitals, even though there's never been a single complaint in the entire
no,
NHS about trans women being on women's wards. So
come on.
they're like, "What do you think about this? What do you think about that?" And I'm like, "Listen, this is the bottom line, okay? This is the thing that we need to come back to every fucking time, and it's this." Why are you not as invested in looking after everybody
Yep,
as you are in trying to argue for your right to be exclusionary?
yep. This is one of the big things. I'm glad you actually brought that up. This show got off to a rocky start, but luckily it kept on the track. But it's a really, really good point because most people nowadays spend their whole lives on the fucking internet and they're just looking at shit and looking to throw shade. And it's like, man, who the fuck? It's like I said earlier, most of these people are all bots. They're fucking nobodies, They're
Mm,
literal nobodies. But yet they've got some sort of entitled opinion on the internet
mm,
and they can hide anonymously
yeah.
because they are like, I don't know, pull some off the top of my head. Stephen, 1957 BBQ6. And you're like, yeah, cool. What's that? That's nobody. And yet, meanwhile, he's got like 20,000 likes on a comment because he said something that was fucking, again, completely controversial, you know?
Mm.
And it's, fuck. It really, it's a hot topic for me because it pisses me off.
Yeah, I just don't engage with that stuff anymore. I
No,
think,
I'm glad you don't. It's not worth it because it's all fakery. But go on, sorry.
yeah, but also I just think it's teaching those social media sort of algorithms and stuff that, listen, the more divisive something is and the more people are
Yeah,
being horrible to each other, the more other people are going to engage. And I want to be part of the people who are like, actually, I'm not going to have a conversation with strangers generally anyway. And if I'm going to talk to people that I don't know very well, or, who follow my page or my work, generally we have really lovely conversations. So I've spent a long time really cultivating those spaces to be,
of course.
I've got rules with myself that I don't engage with people in public spaces that aren't mine or aren't moderated. And then the people I do engage with in my spaces or spaces that are created for people like me, or that are very community focused and very positive, very caring, it's a really positive and wonderful experience. And I feel like it's so difficult because obviously I do believe in freedom of speech at the same time.
I know what
So
you
I
mean.
think so much of my attitude is like, I'm going to intentionally spend my energy and time in spaces that are right for me and that I believe in and that are positive. And that's it.
I think you should. And again, again, to the folks out there, it's a hot topic, but pronouns are pronouns, it's something that if someone asked me to refer to them, I'll go, okay, cool. It's nothing against, makes no skin off my back at the end of
No.
the day. You know what I mean? And on the same topic, I've had sexual relations with people from most communities. It makes no ends to me, but most people are just so fucking narrow-minded, and
Yeah.
and the fun part I like to talk about it is the fact that, I mean, shit, anybody can just go, okay, you want to be you, fuck it, I'm being me. Most of these people out there, they're going and robbing people. What kind of credibility have you got to say anything to anyone? When most of these people that are slandering people are sitting there on the internet being trolls, and then in their spare time, they're getting clicks and likes, fucking snapshotting robberies. Cool. So you've got no opinion in the world. You know what I mean? And in terms of the internet, man, fuck them all at the end of the day. I believe that truly, again, like I said, your community gets so much shit because of all this school stuff and all that. I've got kids. I don't even pay attention to that. It ain't even happening in my school. This is very select. It's also happening in private schools, people, not fucking public. So what's also fun about that is all this drag crazy stuff is happening in private schools in America. And what's crazy about that is the people that are arguing against it are the same mothers that are putting their kids into it. And the UK is getting behind that. It's got fuck all to do with us people. Oof, a little furious there.
Good.
No, but it's very true because we are following suit, and I said this to the prior cutoff. We're following suit in America like the beat of a hat. We shouldn't. We are fucking the UK. We shouldn't be giving a fucking toss about what's going on over there.
No. Do you know what? I think that the thing that we miss out on as well is big. So this I'm going to share something. When one of my best mates, well, a couple of my best mates came along to my second book launch at the beginning of this year. That was for historical. It's a book called 28, and it's about those of us who grew up in an era where it wasn't legal to mention homosexuality in school.
Interesting.
So there's 28 authors. We all contributed different things, and two of my mates came along to this book launch. One is bi and the other is straight,
Yep.
as far as I know. And the straight friend,
Aren't we all?
you are. And
Sorry,
afterwards,
go on.
she said, I'm really pissed off. I was like, oh, really? What about? Oh, she's a very trusted friend. So I was just really, really curious. We talk all the time. I said, what about? She said, I feel so angry that I didn't get to experience queerness in my school life, even though I'm not queer. I feel like I've been robbed of an experience of
Yeah.
how life is for so many other people. And she said, I know for a fact, she said, all the queer friends I have now as an adult, she's a little bit older than me, she said, my queer friends validate me so much, and we get to be ourselves with each other. And she's also got ADHD, and she was like, I get to be me and an individual and be like purely myself in this setting, and I didn't get that at school. And I feel like it's because individuality was so suppressed, and it was illegal to be gay or to
True.
mention gayness.
It's very true.
And I feel very, very passionately that that is what is happening in broader society. Even for me, like, people will say, as an example, I changed my name. I don't talk about what my old name was because it's like makes me a bit
That's
gaggy.
good. That's
But
okay. It's okay.
but people have said to me like, oh, I think it's amazing that you've changed your name. Secretly, I actually hate my name, and I'm like, you can change that. Like, you're allowed. You're an adult. You can literally go.
Deep,
It's
you can change it by deep poll.
exactly. I was like, you can literally change your name, and they're like, no, I can't do that. I can't cause a fuss. So I feel like I don't think there's one single experience that trans folks go through that isn't shared in other places by other people. So, um, some women, for example, if they've had breast cancer and they, have a double mastectomy and they decide that they're going to remain flat chested, they're like, actually, I'm going to embrace this.
Yep.
And a lot of them will have tattoos that will kind of celebrate the journey that they've been through. Those tattoo artists often also work on transmasculine people like me, who also have surgery on their chest. Obviously, it's for a different reason, but the recovery is the same, the process is the same. Emotionally, it's different, but there's so much that we share with each other. I moderate, help to moderate a very large home birthing group on Facebook, and we're very intentionally inclusive. So there are trans men in there, there are non-binary people in there, and there are women. All of them. You're only allowed in if you have had a baby or if you're pregnant.
Of course. Yeah. Okay.
So, plenty of like trans men in there. These are guys that you would see on the street and you'd be like, that's a bloke. And a lot of them have chosen to carry their own kids. I mean, it's partly cheaper, but also some people want to have their own biological children. That's just the way that everybody else does it. It's simple. Same with non-binary people. And all of this community, it's not all women, but yet they're all going through the same thing together.
Well, one of the things that people used to ask me, there was like, what is your show called? The Post-Human Podcast? And I would say one of two things. One, this is going to be in the ground when I'm dead. Yeah. And two is we're going to go to a post-human society where nothing really matters. And I think a lot of it, Christianity is on the rise for whatever reason. I don't know what's pumping and fueling that, but it's again going against your own community. And they're most of the fucking people, the Catholics, the Christians. I can see it just through podcasting. Whatever the reason is, I'm not fully aware of. I do a lot of research. I can't quite get the grips of that. But it's so strange that at the moment everything's so inclusionary, but yet the people that are doing it are also sowing seeds of like retribution and fuck ups. And it's so tricky. Like, I keep going off on these tangents because they are so important, and I am getting. It's a hot topic. I'm actually really glad I got you on the show because these are real important fucking things, and it's very tricky. I can't express myself in your shoes, so I'm trying to do it myself.
Sure.
I kind of feel that's what's going on at the minute. Um, this is a very tricky sort of interview for myself. Again, you're the first non-binary podcaster on the show, so there you go. I'm going to put that out there. It is, again, it is tricky. What is some again? All I hear about it is the media side, and this is the issue. Is I'm trying to always keep a straight line because that's me. But then there's this constant barrage from the media. But like I said, it's all weirdos and fucking freaks, and then you end up taking the heat. What are some of like the real day-to-day hard stuff in the UK? Because I don't think we're quite there in the UK yet in terms of the way America is. I think we're a lot more. I don't know if I might be very wrong on this. But in terms of us to America, I would have thought that we're a little bit more inclusionary. I could be way wrong, and I would like you to
Yeah.
probably tell me that I am wrong. This is just me from the outside of the fence. And if I am wrong, I would like it to be known because it's a really important fucking factor.
Yeah. I mean, you know, I'm mixed race. My grandmother came over from India when she was 9 years old, so I'm Asian and white. But for all intents and purposes, I'm perceived as a white person, and that's pretty much how I move through the world, and that's how people read me.
Okay.
So obviously, I can only answer with certain obvious sort of privileges. Because it is far more dangerous to be, first of all, trans feminine, so transgender, and having moved or come out more as a feminine gender, and to be also obviously not white. So first of all, it's much worse for those folks. So I can only answer as me, and also in a sort of, if you want to put it in these terms, patriarchal sort of pro-masculine society.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
Me transitioning and becoming more masculine is seen as an obvious thing to do because, of course, being sarcastic, masculinity is the superior vibe. But
What? Again, I
go on.
don't mean to cut you because that's very interesting. I didn't know you're from a mixed background, and because I'm not, when I do these interviews, I only do a mild bit of, I'm not doing like full background checks on people, and I just literally do a little bio and whatever. But in terms of that, because mixed race from what background? Sorry.
Asian and white.
So obviously they prefer boys, correct? Most of the time.
Yeah, but it's really interesting because my grandmother was the eldest of 6 sisters, and they
Oh,
kept
wow.
trying for, my great grandparents kept trying for a boy, never got one. So in a lot of ways, it is it's the very feminine side of my family, and yeah. So, and because the great grandfather that I knew ish, we weren't close. I didn't see him loads, but I don't think he was the biological father of my grandmother, because he didn't marry my great grandmother until my grandmother was already 2 years old. So it's likely that he actually met my great grandmother after she'd already had her daughter
Right.
first, with someone else. So, I mean, that's a theory. I'll never know, but that's the way it looks anyway. But what was the question?
It's Friday, people.
I know.
I take people down fucking tangents. It was just, luckily I can always remember my own questions at points as long as people are talking and I don't talk too much. It was basically, obviously, in the trans community, obviously, you mix race. Most of the other side, they always want boys.
Mm.
Did you ever feel? I didn't even ask this part. I don't know if there was a real question. I just it was sort of backing on what you were saying. But did you ever feel yourself that that was sort of where you swayed towards because of like you just said then prior, it's almost like this has set up itself in a question, but you predominantly female background. You ever feel like maybe that was a reason why? I've not spoke to you about your own.
Oh, I see what you mean. No,
I've not
no,
spoken to you about your own personal journey yet. If that is completely off key, feel
no,
free.
no.
Um,
I think it's a reasonable question, but the bottom line is that I grew up in a family that the idea of being transgender didn't even exist. So,
of course.
and I think it's generally the case that you have this feeling for a really long time that whenever people call you a girl or a boy, whatever your assigned gender is at birth, there's something about it when it happens that there's just a little part of you that just feels a tiny bit sick. And you don't know why. By the time you've learnt about it, the penny drops and you're like, fucking hell, that's what it is, but up until then, some people, you get like celebrities like Jazz Jennings, and she told her parents when she was like 3 or 4 years old, she's like, I'm a girl, I'm a girl, I'm a girl, and she kept correcting them. She's like, I'm a girl. And nobody introduced that concept to her. But I think she's rare. I think for most of us, we're like, something off here. When I turned 18, I knew that legally I'd be considered a woman. And even now, the thought of that concept makes me feel a bit off, a
Well,
bit green.
I was going to speak about your own journey, but go on. Sorry.
Yeah. And so it was just so obvious that by the time I found that there was this community of people just like me, and millions of them, by the way, absolutely millions. This is not like 5 people who've got the wrong idea and a bit confused. This is like,
No, no.
and we've existed for many thousands of years across many different cultures, and many of which we were revered, and
This
you
is
know
why.
you
This is why. Sorry, I go against all this Christian bullshit that keeps coming out.
yeah.
Well,
So
it's not Christian; it's Catholic or whatever it is. But go on.
well, yeah, it's just this sort of supremacy, this hierarchy, this sort of
Yeah,
idea of total superiority, and everything else is garbage, which I
of course.
think's not very nice, not
No.
very Christian. But
Well, it isn't. No, you're right. It isn't at all. Sorry,
no.
carry
So yeah, I think by the time this comes along, I think it's such proof that this is an organic thing, because most of us have never been brought up with the concept of gender identity possibly being different to your biological sex or whatever. Um, to put it simply, but I think the fact that we exist and in droves, when nobody's kind of given us the tools to express this or identify it from a young age, is proof in and of itself that this is inherent. And I've got a 4-year-old niece, and she doesn't know the ins and outs of things, but often she's got to this age where she's nearly 4, and we're sat at the lunch table, and she'll look around. She's learning her numbers. She looks around and she goes, "We have 3 girls and 3 boys and 1 they them." And I'm like, cool. She doesn't know anything more than that. All she knows is that some people are like me, like Unky Harris, and that's all that she needs to know. And
Yeah.
we don't talk about it more than that. If she's got a question, she can ask me, but she just accepts it as it is. There's no indoctrination. We don't talk about it more than she is curious about. Like, I don't feel the need to talk about it. And if she's watching her favorite movie Frozen, she's decided that Olaf is non-binary and everyone else is girls and boys. So I'm just like Olaf the snowman, apparently. And I think that's quite sweet.
What makes you go by they them rather than just going like he him? I mean, because
No, it doesn't feel right. It's not.
okay. Again,
It,
if it's
yeah.
too much for personal, it's just
No.
I kind of get it, but my I mean I do get it. I mean, I'm just talking for myself. Is that my own sexuality is all over the place, but I don't actually identify as anything, which
Yeah.
is pretty it's peculiar in itself. If someone was to say to me, I would go, yeah, I've slept with these people. That you know, there's
Yeah,
not
whatever.
really, unless it's out of the human element. I've not slept with that category of people. You know, broaden that to animals, not a fucking chance. But within the human element, we're all good. And
Yeah, I'm the
but
same.
but when I would imagine so. Most people to get to that next category, you have to be a pretty out of the box. But it is what and but I just identify as myself, but
Mm,
it's very peculiar because if people ask me, they go, no, but you identify as this, but I'll go, well, it's kind of not really, and
mm,
it's like an anomaly. I'm almost like a weird anomaly, to be quite honest, where they go, but they're almost like you have to fit into this category, and I'm like, not really, because what about these? And then what about that? And they go, yeah, but you're this. And they go, well, no, not really, because I'm still identifying as me. And that,
yeah, yeah.
it's
I
kind of
think,
strange, but go on.
yeah, I
Anyway,
think for me, I stick to they them because actually we use singular they them in our conversation all the time, and it's just the most easiest one. But actually, anytime someone calls me she or a he, it's not that I'm offended, I'm not angry or upset about it. It's just that there's a reaction that's going on that is totally inherent. It's totally just
got
part
ya.
of me that's just like cringes. And they them isn't a perfect fit, but it'll do. Like, and to be honest, I almost feel like even the concept of gender in everyday speech, I just find that odd. I find it weird when
Yeah,
people say to me like, but have you got a fanny or a knob? I'm like, but
no.
I'm like, but you don't know that about all the other people that you know. Like you might have seen your parents and you might have seen your siblings when you were kids, or your partners or your
Yeah.
own children when you're, looking after them. But generally speaking, it's not a thing in our culture anyway.
It's so
To
personal as well, isn't
Yeah,
it?
to be familiar with what bits somebody's got. So I'm
Yeah,
like, you already take on faith what somebody's gender is. So why is it any different from me?
of course. I mean,
And
it's
what
go on. No,
Yeah, I why do you need to know that in order to picture me? And another thing that I've had is that I don't date straight men. A lot of them, I've met over time, and they fancy it, and I'm like, listen, babe, it's not going to work, and I'll tell you why. And they're like, but body types. I'm like, yes, that part is compatible for you. But I said, but first of all, I'm going to tell better, ruder, and childish, probably more laddie jokes
I'm
than
gonna
you are.
fuck. I'm gonna fuck you up comedy wise.
Exactly.
That's
And
the
I said,
deafening
I'm
thing
I'm
for
gonna
a male.
roast you. I'm gonna roast you better than anyone else has probably ever roasted you. I anything you say is never gonna shock me. And not to mention, like, I'm really to the point, I'm very
Oh
direct.
no.
I
Yeah.
can choose to say something gently and kindly if that's appropriate. And in my work, it's something I do very intentionally all the time because I want people to feel um, respected and safe and all that sort of
Of
thing.
course.
But in my personal life, I'm much less filtered than that. And I'm like, so yes, you might get the bits and pieces that you're used to, but you're going to actually have to speak to me in between those moments and hang out with me and
Yeah.
actually form a relationship. And it's going to be unlike
Well,
anything you've ever had before. And seeing as you've only ever dated women, you're completely unqualified and I can't be asked.
I mean, I'll admit, back in the day, um, this is what's funny about most males. Again, always like a what would have been, I hope I get this right, like a female like yourself, they, them. But every male wants that kind of category where, oh, yeah, she can mantle with me, blah, blah, blah. And it fails every time. What are you doing, guys? You fucking lose. It doesn't work. If you,
No.
what's fucking crazy is they, it's like a weird kick for some men, and it is their downfall because they try and I feel that those type of men get caught in a loop also because they're constantly trying to aim for this one thing going round and round and round, but meanwhile not trying to look anywhere else.
Mm.
And to be quite honest, that's pretty. I mean, most men do that all the time. Like, not me, not me. I'm snared by bear traps, but that even took me a lot of getting. You know what I mean?
Mm.
But let me just again. I don't want to go too much into your journey, but what was some of the hardest things during your transition? Because I personally have took steroids myself. I know what effect that had on me. I've spoke about it in my show. Look, I haven't been to the gym for ages. I look like an old man right now, but at one point, I was like 14 stone, almost 14 stone. But
Yeah.
what's some of the the hardest things about transitioning? Because I know the roids thing, and you know,
I mean, I don't really get that. I'm only on a half dose of testosterone. It's a very gentle process. I'm a very tall person, so I don't think that,
how tall
it's
are you? Just
I'm
out of
six foot
curiosity.
two.
Fuck, Jesus.
So
How tall do you think I am?
I have no idea.
Take a guess. Any guess. It wouldn't
I don't
even
know,
matter.
five
Oh,
eight.
oh, 5'7", 3/4.
Oh, close,
That's
close.
such a very close.
Okay,
You can
but
tell. Everyone can tell. What is it? You can tell by a fucking camera. That's bullshit. That's
no.
fucking crap. No, go on,
But
go on, carry on.
no, so, I mean, in terms of the actual transition, like it's been a pretty non-eventful thing. It's very gradual. Like I'm a bit fuzzier than I was before, and that's about it. But it's more the social stuff, like and access it. So the NHS gender clinic sort of system has been so defunded that we've got so much less clinics than we had 10 years ago, and about 400% more
Yeah,
referrals a
yeah,
year. So
true.
most people are waiting 5 years just to speak to somebody and have their first conversation. And for me, it was a fucking really long time. So the wait has been shit. The fact that I'm non-binary, because the gender clinic got taken to court by some woman who'd pushed and pushed and pushed to get on testosterone and all these other things, then suddenly decided she got it wrong and then fucking sued them. And
So what do you mean in terms of
they
like dosage or
hang on, I'll finish this thought and then I'll get back to the dosage thing. But so because this woman had hammered home the point for years that she was non-binary and insisted that she wanted testosterone, got on it, realized it was a mistake, and then sued the gender clinic, they're now very, very um nervous when someone like me turns. I'm 35. I've been out for 9 years at this point. I'm like,
got ya.
I've got no one. Everyone approves. Everyone's fine. I mean, well, I've got one person in my life who doesn't want to get involved, but I'm just like, whatever. I'm just carrying on. I don't give a shit.
You
And
can't win over everyone.
yeah, and so I'm like, listen, it's not an issue. So we're taking this sort of testosterone slowly. At first, they put me on like 10 milligrams of testosterone a day with gel. And I thought, and after about a year, they let me up it to 20 milligrams a day. But for most like trans men who are looking for full masculinization, will be on sort of 30 to 40 milligrams
Yeah,
of testosterone a day. Or if they're injecting it, I think it's about 70 milligrams a week.
probably way more than that.
Okay.
Oh,
But
you can get something. I might have to edit this out. It's they're called NAP 50s, which are basically 50 milligram. They're like 225 milligram. Oh no, they're 50 milligram tablets, and you can take two of them a day. And bodybuilders do them
oh, okay.
on the reg. Not shouting anyone to do them. Anadrol 50s. Come get them now. TimTurner.com. That website doesn't exist. You're never going to find it. But no, in terms of like testosterone and stuff like that, it is what it is. It's again, you're at the right age where you're at right sound of mind. That there's obviously a big business anyway, big pharma. I mean, fuck me, they can. If I could get legal steroids right now, they'd have all my money, all of it. I'd go, cool, take it all. Rejuvenation, go on, here's another fucking take it all, right? And it is what it is. At the end of the day, I think the problem is, I mean, for myself, is I think I'm a little bit selfish in my own right for that. But for most people, it's a necessity. They genuinely need that treatment.
Yeah.
And I think that somewhere along that line, there's that grey area, And unfortunately, there's people, not that I'd ever do it, but there's people like that that are really abusing that grey area. I mean,
Yeah.
there's like, I've only just thought about this now, but I remember back in the day, you'd get hypochondriacs, How many of those fuckers are lately trying to just pillage the system because they're like, oh, I'm trans, I'm this. And it's like, man, and I would
It's
imagine
very
it's
rare.
very rare, but there's, it does drain the system in itself.
Well, I mean, I don't know because I mean, it would be such a huge thing to put yourself through just for the sake of it. And like, I have yet to meet anybody who's done that. I've obviously, as I said, I've heard of people who've made a big mistake and got it wrong, like a couple of times here and there. But generally speaking, it takes years to get on hormones. Do you know what I mean? And normally, by the time that they're even talking to you about it as a possibility,
Well,
by that,
I mean, through like again, you're talking through like medicinal purposes, but you could
right,
naturally get. Again, I didn't get any of my stuff when I was on roids. I got that streak,
right,
and there's people out there that have done that, that have just gone beyond like the medical board and just gone, fuck it, man.
mm,
That guy can get me these roids, jab in the ass, you know. But
fair.
go on, sorry, carry on. Go on.
No, no, I think I'd misunderstood what you were saying, but no, that makes sense. It makes sense. Even I think people acquiring any drug illegally is not. I don't really know how much it affects those who are going through the normal channels, particularly.
I mean, I only say this because you seem very much more of a clean person to myself. I will say, I'm glad that was it'll cut to my cam there, so no one ever seen your face. It'll just be me laughing. But again, when I would never, my only reason why I got on steroids was because, again, you guessed my height. I was literally almost 5'8", and during that time, I was built like a stick. I was fuck all. I could have I have a hi-fi system over there from back in the day that weighs probably more than what I used to back in the day.
Right.
I would probably couldn't even pick it up right now. I'd go, fuck. This is like lifting up my 16-year-old self, 22-year-old self. And I got on testosterone because I'd like to get back on it again. I just need a new link. If anyone that's out there, shoot me up, posthumanpodcast@gmail.com for testosterone. Send it my way. I won't edit that out because it's not, it's a very loose show. I hope you know what you got yourself into. This is loose. Trust me. The internet safety bill's coming up, people. I hope they clock on to me. But no, at the end of the day, I got onto it because, I was, again, I had body, I was literally, I'd look at myself in the fucking mirror and hate myself, And I have a very fast metabolism. And even lately, I switched up to a carnivore diet. I gained a bunch of weight, but I've got so much shit going on at the moment in terms of family life, all this wacky stuff that I'm losing weight again. And it's just, I believe that, again, if I'd take some steroids right now, I'd feel bang back to the way I'd used to be. And that is just because I feel not right in myself. Now, what is the difference between that and me and yourself? Absolutely fuck all. I don't feel right in my identity, and neither do you. And this is what most people really don't fucking understand. No, everybody looks in the mirror and fucking hates themselves. But yet they then judge people on the fucking internet and go, oh, why aren't you allowed to hate yourself? You know?
Well, it's really interesting. There's so many conversations around affirming your gender being something that everybody does. So, you know, there are women out there who feel, you know, upset and that they're a rubbish, quote unquote, rubbish woman if they can't have kids, for example.
Yeah.
And you know, that's a very real pain. And you've not got anybody being like, well, that's total bollocks. You know, we understand that all of us are having this very human experience, and how we feel in our identity is very nuanced. And you know, there are a lot of guys out there who are like, you know, the version of me in my head is not this. And I think obviously if we're really influenced by social media or this idea of what men are supposed to look like, you know, especially in the last sort of 100 years where gyms and bodybuilding has become a thing. I don't know if we would have felt like that before, but at the same time, I think, you know, for example, if a trans woman did want plastic surgery and she wanted breast augmentation, she would have to have 2 doctors sign off on that. But if a cisgender woman just wanted to enlarge her tits, she'd just go to a cosmetic surgeon and he'd be like, yeah, there you go, 10 grand or 5 grand, whatever it is, we'll book you in. So what I'm saying is affirming our gender and our identity and feeling good in our own bodies is something that people do all the time. And like you said earlier, it tends to be the trans non-binary community that are getting the most criticism, when actually we support and don't bat an eye at other people doing that so much.
My only gripe is, and I'll admit that at one point during this like crappy movement, and I was almost conned. I am a self-confessed conspiracy theorist, yet most of the time it's all facts. It always turns out to be a fact. And one of my conspiracy theories at the moment is the fact that the American blue side have been using your community in terms of votes, in terms of not for the UK, but in terms of America. They've been pandering to a community back on it because it's just it's so big in America, because it's a bigger state. People think, oh, it's a trend. No, it's because it's fucking bigger. Like, what are you talking about? How can it be a trend when it's this big compared to this little fucking shitty rock? Like, people don't think about numbers. Like, the numbers speak for themselves. And most people go, yeah, Republicans are getting it right. We need to fucking stop the trans, stop this, stop the blues. And it's not even that, you know? It's everything has become really politicized to the point where lately a community is being like politicized, and no one's fucking, not a single person's talking about that at all. Thank you very much there, Kieran, for somehow appearing on my screen. Cheers, kid. You see my maliciousness there? I'm joking. But no, that was a really important statement as well, so I'm going to shout later.
Well, just to kind of add, just to add to that, it's amazing how I can just turn up in any space, just introduce myself, be like, oh, just by the way, I use they them pronouns. I've said nothing else, and people are a bit like, they either get awkward or they decide that they don't want to talk to me, or they're like, oh, well, why is this suddenly political? And I'm like, I didn't say anything about politics. I just turned up.
Yeah. But that's what it revolves around. Is people don't realize is that since the dawn of time, politics is influencing their day-to-day life because it's always on the cards. Us in the UK, for example, every single day, Rishi fucking Sunak said he can't. Try and find a fucking day where it's not about the Prime Minister or some shit that's going on with ULEZ or some other crap. HS2, you know? And that's the fucking problem. But it's on the same factor in the US, because they're going through their political movement, they've had to sort of try and get votes. And in doing so, It's angered people, and there's also backlash. There's bots all over the place. Like, people don't realize this. I've actually spoke to some people about this and about how fucking cybersecurity works. And as much as I keep this show off the rails and I'm a fuck up, I actually do look into stuff. I'm actually a doctor. Would you not believe it? Ooh, doctor of divinity. It's got fuck all to do with that. But I'm just making some showmanship right there. But no, it's a Friday. But no, literally the whole fucking thing is aimed against you at the minute. Red between blue, and in the middle of it is the LGBTQ plus community. And it fucking sucks because there's no point to it.
No.
No. It's kind of crazy. So let me just again steer it back round to the front of the show. Very long, loose show for a Friday. Obviously your foundation. Let's just quickly talk about that before we know this show was a complete fail.
Say that again. Sorry, what's the question?
Oh, it was so obviously your foundation,
Yeah.
The CFCTH, as it's been abbreviated throughout the whole show. I just want to round up talking about that because that's what we should have spoke about this whole show, but I've took it off tangents all over the place. It's been for a reason. People will get it in about 18 months.
Yeah.
But no, obviously, your foundation, what you started up, obviously it means a lot to you. You've been through a lot yourself. What's your goals for that? What would be the most important thing in terms of what you could add to that?
So I think my mission really is to educate people about, firstly, what trauma is. Because I mean, even my time in the NHS, I was talking to patients who, we would talk about stuff in detail, and then if I later referred to it as childhood trauma, they're like, wait, what? And we'd been talking about what they've been through in detail, but they never identified it as childhood trauma. So I think I want people to be, firstly, more educated about trauma and what that is, how that feels, how to identify it. And second of all, how we can actually heal from it permanently, if that's something that we want to do or are in a position to do, because obviously it's different for everybody. Because similarly to how things used to be with doctors, in medicine, of like, yes, doctor, I'm not educated enough to say anything other than just do as I'm told. I think we're kind of having a similar experience with mental health. You mention mental health to somebody, the only people they think of is like therapists or psychiatrists and stuff. They've got this monopoly and this sort of
Very true.
this authority over people's well-being, and I think it's wrong. Not because I want to replace that, but because I feel that the individual should be well educated enough to understand about their own mental health and how mental health works in general, and what their options are, and that yes, finding a good therapist or psychiatrist or something can be absolutely life-saving and really bloody fantastic, and I really promote it, but it's not the only part. There are other people out there like me who actually know how to process trauma and actually help you to do that. So and that's quite a quick thing, and it's not an easy thing, but it's also kind of simple, so that when you're ready, if you get to that point and you actually are ready to work through it, and that's something that you want to do, you have the choice, you have the agency, and you have the knowledge to be able to understand where you are in your sort of mental health journey, what your options are, and what would probably best suit you at this moment in time, and also not to buy into the therapy schools kind of marketing. And what I mean by that is that if you go and train as a counselor, a therapist, a CBT person, an EMDR person, a psychiatrist, psychologist, part of your training is being taught that your profession is the best one.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
And part of that is
I get
also
that.
teaching you that the type of stuff that you offer, because it's evidence based, is automatically safe. Okay, there are a lot of professionals who are in that kind of more medicalized, more pathologized kind of system, who are trained, they've got a lot of letters to their name or they've got a lot of certificates, but actually they've not been through the same things as somebody
Oh,
else. They don't often know what they're looking at. They only know about it from a book. They don't have a lot of personal experience necessarily.
no, of
And
course.
they're not necessarily unbiased people. They haven't necessarily done enough of their own work to mean that they're not negatively influencing their patients. So what I'm trying to say is it's fake. This idea that just because somebody's certified or just because somebody's done a
Yeah,
particular type of training that they're automatically safe, they're automatically good at their job, and they're automatically the person that's going to help you is not, there's no guarantee there. It's not to say that we shouldn't trust them or that we shouldn't give them a go. We should. But I think that it's too much a system where people are pushed into those situations because they're told this is your only salvation, this is your only solution, and that's all there is to it. And if you go to somebody who's alternative or a coach or something, like, oh, that's a nice idea, but it's probably bullshit.
yeah. These
And
most coaches don't know shit. I ain't gonna lie. But go on, sorry.
yeah, I mean, there are plenty who don't.
They don't. They've not, like you just on the point. Most of them haven't lived a life. One of the theories that I live by, I'm sure you might be able to get behind this yourself, because you seem like you've lived a hell of a lot of lives. Um,
Yeah.
I believe that if you've lived X amount of different events, you can sort of guess what the next event's going to be. I.e., cheating, you know where it's going to go, you know what the events are going to be, so it's very easy to establish what's going to happen. And I think you can put that sort of spin to anything, to be quite honest. You can go out in the morning, X amount of things can happen, X amount after that when you've walked on. And it's literally like a personal walking algorithm. Yeah. And I believe it's a very weird concept. Again, I'm very spiritualistic, and I believe that it takes a very open mind to get it. But I believe that from all these little events, you can also precognitively almost think and plan about what's going to happen next because you've lived it X amount of times. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think where my kind of intuition is best placed is a
Same,
lot
same
around,
thing.
yeah, but I think for me it's a lot around people, how they behave, the things that they say, their attitudes to things. It tells me a lot about where they've come from and whether they're ready or not to kind of address their stuff, and whether they do or they don't, what that outcome will likely be. So I'm pretty good at reading people, and I can see often quite clearly where they're going. And obviously that's not always something, or very rarely anything, that I would share out loud. And it's very rare that anyone asks me for that kind of input. So these are all ideas that I keep to myself, and nobody likes that wanker who's like, I knew that was going to happen.
I know. I don't ever say it, but I'm that guy in the background that thinks I get it, you know. But listen, this has been, I think we're like 2 hours. I've only just
Yeah.
fucking realized. This has been a very, very loose show. I had to take my shades off for a minute. Let me put them back on. Oh god damn. Very, very loose show. Friday night show, folks. Thank you for coming on here. We've discussed loads of topics. Very, very
Yeah.
loose. This is probably the loosest show of this season. But yeah, it's been my most funnest. I've actually had a
Awesome.
really, really good time.
Yeah, likewise.
Um,
It's been a lot of fun.
um, I'm sure again, if you're ever doing anything, you're more than welcome to come back on the show. Also, I have to do this shout out. Halloween, the Halloween spooktacular, it's coming. Hold on, the notes. Yeah. The notes are right here, look. Attached to this knife. These are all the notes for the Halloween show. Stabbed in the mannequin. So that's coming up. But I would love for you to be on the Halloween show. It's going to be pretty good. It's going to be like 7 hours long. People can just flit in and out.
Nice.
Pretty open. Always open to come on the show. But where can people? The next show I will be very more serious. We'll do a Wednesday show. A Wednesday show. Yeah, where I'm not so fucked up on a Friday. It's now 9 p.m. in the UK. I've been drinking for 12 hours, just to let people know, and getting a little bit high. So yeah, this is the Friday show. Tonight we've been here with the founder of the CFCTH, as it's going to be constantly now known on this show. I hope you actually use that acronym because it's a real acronym, you know?
It's brilliant. Brilliant.
I actually created an acronym for you. It was I didn't mean to, but it saved me the time, it saved the words. I hope it saved subtitles time. But today we've been here with Harris Hill. I am Dr. Timothy K. Turner. This is the Post-Human Podcast, Season 3. Thank you very much, people. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Let's spread out the city, yeah, we'll make it right. Got me feeling speechless when you're on my mind. Running through these empty halls, we take our flight. Diamonds in your eyes, I'm stunned by how it shines. We could sip our wine, rest your head on mine. In my heart, you'll be alright, alright. Close the curtains, we'll be electrifying the bedrooms, ours all night, all night, all night. Driving down the city like there's nothing due, knowing there's no other when I look at you. Run away to somewhere when we're feeling blue. Just me and you, we leave no clues. Just me and you. We'll leave no clues. Just me and you. We'll leave no clues. Just me and me and me. Just me and me and me. Just me and me. Always switch till morning by the things we do. Effortless and cynical the way you move. Only cared for me and no one else but you. I wanna get the world and have it just for two. We could sip our wine, rest your head on mine. In my heart, you'll be alright, alright. Close the curtains, we'll be electrifying the bedrooms, ours all night, all night, all night. Driving down the city like there's nothing due, knowing there's no other when I look at you. Run away to somewhere when we're feeling blue.